Hey guys, welcome again to Evolution Through Awareness. Today's video is titled, We Are All Human. So today's video is about changing false beliefs and breaking flawed perception which alters our potential throughout our lives. As humans, we tend to have a tendency to focus on our differences, whether it be our outward appearance or the difference between our wealth, where we live, the people we associate with, and alike. But there's something that we should be focusing on which would be far more helpful to us if we did so. So rather than focusing on our differences, what I'm going to suggest is that you actually focus on what you have in common with others at the most fundamental level, and what that is the fact that we are all human beings. So why is this so important to understand early in your growth when you're trying to make a positive change in your life? The reason this is so important is because of the fact that as human beings we have a tendency to compare and contrast ourselves and our lives with the lives of others. In nearly all cases, generally people look up, they don't look down. Successful and wealthy people and the happiest people don't look down and think, I would rather not be wealthy, I would rather not have success. Generally they wouldn't say that. And I would rather be less happy. That's not how it works. In fact, it's usually, and in nearly all cases, surely the opposite. If you are down and out, you're struggling in life, things haven't worked out for you, maybe you're unhappy, maybe overweight, wish you weren't, wish you had more money, wish you had more things, wish you had more success in life, we always look up. We look at the people who have these things and we wonder how they got them. There's no problem with looking at people and wondering, how can I get to where they are? I want to be happier, I want to be more successful, wealthier, or whatever it might be. That isn't actually the problem. The problem is for people who look up at others and wonder how they got there, and the way that they choose to think about it is that these people must have done something wrong. They must have done something bad or negative in order to work their way to the top. And if it wasn't that, then maybe it's because they were born into money. They had some sort of network that you didn't have, some access to something that was beyond your reach as a human being. By thinking like this, we tend to dismiss the efforts, the focus, the patience it took for most of these people to reach these heights. Yes, some people do have a leg up. They have some luck, maybe have come from a wealthy family, which means that to a certain extent they have been fast-tracked through the process. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they didn't have to put in a lot of effort and sacrifice a lot also to get there. If we're not contrasting the people at the top by saying that they've had some sort of inherent advantage over us, then we're looking at ourselves and highlighting our disadvantages. I live in a poor area. There's crime all around me. The people around me are into gangs and drugs and crime as well. I've had a poor education. My family background isn't good. I've had to go through trauma and struggles. And this is another way to look at why we haven't gone beyond our current situations. So you have to stop and consider whether this way of thinking actually helps you in your life. It might be the case that you're from a difficult background, or you've had a troubled childhood, or whatever the case, and it may be the case that other people have had an easier run than you. But by focusing on what you don't have and what they do have, and maybe the fact that they've had some inherent advantage that is well beyond your reach, you deny yourself access to changing your own life through effort, through focus and patience. Rather than focusing on what disadvantages you have in your life and what advantages others may have had throughout their lives, and generally a lot of people don't even know, they generally just assume because they see somebody with money or whatever it might be and they think, yeah, but they've had this and I didn't have access to that. Rather than doing something like that, it would be far more helpful to you to look at yourself as a human being, look at the other people who may be successful, who are leading the kind of lives you wish you had, and to think that what they have gained in their life can be acquired through effort, patience, and focus. I mean, are any of these people, the success they have and the way you've defined it, whether it be through money, happiness, or whatever, are these aspects of life beyond your potential? Are they beyond possibility? Are they impossible for you to ever reach or to gain? Whatever it may be, wealth, happiness, success, if it's something positive that you see others having in their life that you wish to have yourself, it can be acquired, but you have to be willing to make the sacrifices and to do whatever it takes to get there. Now, I'm not saying things are easy to change in your life. Maybe you have come from difficult circumstances, but you have to not assume that it's impossible. As soon as you make that assumption and suggest that someone else had some inherent advantage over you, well, then you dismiss the possibilities for yourself. An example of this may be somebody comes from a very poor and crime-ridden area. They say, this is just how it is here. These folks or these people have had this, of course they're happy and they've had these advantages and everything else. Are you saying that it's actually impossible to leave that area? That it's just no way you could actually find a job in a completely different town or region and start a new life in a different area and with a totally different mindset and outlook on life? Are you actually saying that that's impossible? Is somebody saying that, well, that person's wealthy, they came from money? Are they saying that as if the person just fell into a big money pit, or did that person earn it? And by saying that, are you suggesting that there's no possible way you could find another reasonable way of earning money yourself? A legal way, of course, and a way that requires you to come up with an original idea. A business, you may have to go through struggles, you may have to sacrifice, you may have to endure for years to make your ideas actually manifest, but they're possible. And I think it's too easy for people to just have an out and just blame or just become victims and look at other people and suggest that other people had some inherent advantage which is well beyond the reach for them. I have a way of looking at advantages and disadvantages which may help you understand your potential and the possibilities in your life. Imagine a line, a spectrum. At one end you have people with a massive advantage in life or massive advantages in life. For example, maybe they do come from a wealthy family, so they don't have to buy their first car, they don't have to pay for any of their tuition fees, any schooling. Maybe they have both parents and a great network and direct access into a particular type of employment through their parents. At this end of the spectrum, yes, there are advantages. People can have an easier route into life and success, but in some cases, this can be a negative because sometimes without the sacrifice and without the value to the efforts and time they've had to put in, they miss lessons and they don't often develop a certain level of resilience unless it's specifically taught to them by their parents or their mentors. At the other end of the spectrum, you may have people who come from broken families, who live in bad neighborhoods, who have had a poor education, and for them to crawl out of that particular type of situation or circumstance can be much harder. Maybe they have to look after a child because they're a single parent. Maybe they're paying for their own education. Maybe it takes them years to save for their first car. And if they have an idea, they have nobody to fund it immediately. Of course, looking at it like this, you can tell that yes, there are advantages in life for some people and disadvantages for others. But what you need to understand about this spectrum, and the way I choose to look at it, is this. Yes, some people have an easier run, but that doesn't mean it's not possible for the people at the other end of the spectrum, because it has been proven many, many times. Some people have found a way to get from the worst situations, the worst circumstances. There are a lot of examples out there of this, and they've found a way to become wildly wealthy and successful and happy in life. And there's no particular situation or circumstance where that you could be in that somebody else hasn't already come from and become successful and wealthy and happy, or whatever it may be. So what's important to focus on is the fact that it's possible. It may take more years. It may mean you have to work 3 jobs to save more. You may have to pay for your education. You may have to work yourself to the bone and sacrifice so much to get to the same place that it takes somebody else to get to at the other end of the spectrum very easily because of their advantages in their life. But the idea is that it's possible. The only difference between you and them is these minor advantages, not the actual possibilities or potential. And this is why I've chosen this particular heading for this subject. We have to start looking at people as human beings. We can't look up at others who have created a great deal of success in their life and somehow place them on this pedestal to a degree that they're almost like an alien being. They have a different brain than we have. They have access to this kind of potential and possibilities in their life that is well beyond anything we could ever do, because we're not the same as them. But we are. They are just human beings, just like us. And in fact, in many cases, maybe they have disadvantages to you if you look at it from that view. There are very few true advantages in life at the most fundamental level. For example, yes, there are some people like maybe Usain Bolt, for example, with his ability to sprint, no amount of training on somebody else's, part is going to actually get them to that same level. They're never going to run as fast as him, because not only does he train very hard, but he is also genetically gifted. That's something that is an advantage that comes from birth. That is something that you could look at and say, well, that's fair enough. He has an advantage over many other people. Outside the realm of physical gifts, we also have some other gifts that people may have, and talents that are innate and are simply born into them and basically part of their genetic makeup. For example, singing. Certain people have amazing voices. They just do. They may train them and they may sort of hone that skill to be even better, but they are simply born with a great voice. Whereas others may practice and practice and practice and never have a voice as nice as this other person who may have never practiced in their life. The same can maybe be said of certain other talents around numbers, around seeing patterns, around creativity, artistic creativity and music. Yes, there are some advantages that seem to be just born into people, but these are few and far between, and if they are common, it's more on a sort of general level, not the level of genius. No matter how you look at it, generally speaking, as human beings, there are very few actual genetic advantages that some have over others. The advantages that we spoke of earlier around wealth and around networks and support in one's life as advantages over people who have come from a much harder upbringing and a much more significant background of struggle. Looking at these advantages, I think it's relevant to look at how they came about. For example, you may look at somebody who has had an easy run through life and you look from the outside, maybe there's more to it, but looking from the outside, it seems that they've had a lot of support in all forms to help them into adulthood and to set them up for life. The way that you could look at that is their family has done well for themselves. Of course, they're going to give their children the best and most significant advantage they possibly can to set them up for their future. And if you had access to the same means, wouldn't you do the same thing for your own children? So instead of discounting their efforts and the sacrifices they made to get where they are in life, maybe you could make the same efforts and make whatever sacrifices necessary to get yourself further, to be able to offer more to your own children to help them throughout their lives. So what can you do about all this? How should you be thinking? Well, as part of the process that I'm putting forward, I am going to suggest that you put all the advantages that you think others have over you to the side. Put all the disadvantages that you believe you have, no matter how reasonable or legitimate they may seem, put them to the side. Start to look at yourself in the same way that you see and view these other people, the people who have the lives or the money or the fame or whatever it might be that you desire in your life. Start looking at them from a fundamental level. They're only human beings. Their brain is just a human brain. Their body is just a human body. Whatever they have in their life, to some extent, they have acquired through luck in some cases, but very few, but most likely through intelligent decisions, through effort and patience. Start thinking along those lines. Start to think, what decisions can I make today that will influence my future to lead me in that direction? Stop thinking that the reasons for your lack of success and happiness in your life cannot be changed. Stop thinking that the reasons that others are doing well because they have cheated the system or other people out of what they deserve. Thinking like that will hold you exactly where you are right now, and you'll never move beyond it. In considering this, you have to be extremely objective with yourself. You have to understand that you are going to have to make a big effort. You are going to have to focus and hone your energies towards a particular goal, and you are going to have to be extremely patient. And maybe to some extent there's a degree of luck thrown in there, or maybe circumstantial timing that may also affect the outcomes of your life. Stop saying things like, they're skinnier, they're wealthier, they have this advantage because of this, or whatever other advantages. We have to stop doing that, because you have to realize, is that doing anything for you? Is that changing anything in your life? Look at your circumstances and consider what's possible. As I said earlier, people tend to look at themselves in the area that they live and say, well, this is the area I'm in. This is, it's hard to do this. It's not impossible. Stop thinking of things as so hard that they become impossible. Impossible to leave an area, impossible to find a job ever, impossible to get any kind of education. It's not impossible. And the longer somebody chooses to think it is, the more they deny themselves the fact that they could actually change. Remember, at the end of the day, we're all just human beings. So what's possible for one is possible for many, if not nearly all. Forget about everybody else. Forget about what advantages they have and what disadvantages you may have. Focus on yourself and what you want out of life, and actually go for it. Use that energy that you have to drive towards your goals. I hope this video has been helpful for you, and I hope you understand the whole idea and concept and reason why this particular lesson is so important early on. The importance of understanding that we are all very similar, and that we as individuals have the potential to create the kind of lives we want ourselves by just focusing on what we want and working towards it. That's the end of the video and the lesson for today. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.